welcome to the first episode of A Key to an Athlete's Mind. My name is Ben, and welcome to the world premiere of our first ever episode. And today we have Charles Joyner, who is a kickboxing champion, K1 kickboxer. But first up, before we get into talking to Charlie, I just want to say a huge thank you to Healthston, who is the sponsor of this podcast. So thanks to them, and a huge shout out to the boys from Carnage House Productions, who sponsored us a bit with renting out the equipment out to us. So shout out to you guys as well. So Charlie, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Honoured to be the first guest.
I know it's a bit risky, but we'll see how it goes.
No, I was going to say first and best, but you're not going to top this after me.
Yeah. So I guess today we're going to talk to you about, your career as a K1 kickboxer, both amateur and you've had one professional fight, as well as just like growing up and you've lived overseas and all things like that. Where did it all start for you? Like where, you were born in England?
Yeah. So I was born in England, lived there till I was 6 in a county called Dorset, which is like a country sort of town, Dorchester. And lived in a little village out there. And then at the age of 6, moved to Malaysia. So Dad was in the Navy, so we just got loads of different foreign postings. So went to Malaysia at 6, and that was just a completely different sort of upbringing there. Different type of lifestyle to England. And then from there we went to Gibraltar, which is like a little British territory at the south of Spain. Was there for a year and a half. And then at the age of 10, about 11, moved to Australia. And I think the really good thing about moving around at such a young age is that it helped me get a really open mind to different cultures and different, people from all different walks of life. But the second thing and it's probably only something that I've reflected on recently and seen, is that by moving around so much at a young age, I just got used to that feeling of change and just being able to delve into new circumstances comfortably without stressing too much and just making the most out of it. So I think that was really beneficial growing up. And then, being in Australia, been in the hills pretty much ever since, so about 14 years now.
Nice. So how do you think if you were to stay in England, how do you think your life could have been different?
Oh, I think about this sometimes. I imagine I would have just lived the usual English life, which would have been get through school and then go somewhere else in England for uni. Probably would have played a bit more football, as in soccer. I would have had a different accent, obviously. But I think I was thinking about this the other day, and it was funny actually because there was some boxing club from the town that I grew up in that followed me on Instagram a year ago or something. And I remember when they followed me, I was thinking, I wonder if I still would have picked up the sport if I'd been living in England. But I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. So as you were growing up and you were moving around the world, and a lot of people would say you've probably lived a very fortunate and, good lifestyle. Where did your love of sport come from? Where did it really begin?
Yeah, so I played sport. I definitely played sport in England. Like I know... I played sport for sure, but it wasn't really a focus. And Malaysia, a little bit more. I was getting more into, say, soccer and swimming. I started to become good at it. But I remember it still wasn't like a main passion. And I guess when you're young, you're sort of that age, 7, 8, 9, you're not really too focused on, where you can go with sport or what you can achieve with it. But I remember specifically when I got to Gibraltar, playing a lot of football, and they chucked me in goal because I was the biggest kid, which I wasn't too happy about at the time. But it turned out being pretty good, because I think being goalkeeper is probably one of the most pressured roles in sport. So especially in soccer. So it taught me to deal with that pressure when there's a lot of expectation on you, because if you let in a few goals, you're going to be the bad guy, and you're very rarely going to be the hero of the game unless you make a ridiculous save. So it's one of those roles where it's tough, but you don't get too much praise from it as well. But I remember then I ended up making the Gibraltar team, which sounds impressive, but there's only like 8 goalkeepers in the running for it. So, but yeah, and it's sort of that little taste of like representative sport. I remember starting to really get interested in sport then and thinking, that was one of my main passions. And I remember at that time, all I ever thought about was soccer and football. Like I remember I'd be playing FIFA constantly, and if we had to do projects at school or whatever it may be, like writing a story, I'd always write about football, and it'd always be orientated around that. But yeah, so I'd say around that sort of age, sort of around 9 to 10 is when I really started getting passionate and obsessed with sport. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you moved to Australia, what was your experiences of sport in Australia? You went to King's High School.
Yeah.
And then after high school, you done a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring with the King's boys even after that. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's sort of shaped you as well.
Yeah, so I think as soon as I arrived in Australia, I could see and going to King's where everyone's expected to play sport, the standard was a lot higher, which was good because at first it's when you're a kid, you just want to be the best. You don't want to have the challenge of, having to compete against people. You just want to be the best. But looking back, it was good that the competition was hard because it made me have to work harder and then improve to be able to actually play the sport at the level you want to. And it was always good. I think in Australia there's a lot of people are focused on sport and will play sport and are interested in sport. So whenever there's interest, there's going to be excellence because people invest more time and energy and money into it. So I think coming to Australia was perfect for me because you could just delve into all these different types of sport. I know going into high school, my interest in soccer started to dwindle a bit, and I got really into athletics, particularly high jump, because at my school, athletics was one of the main sports, and there was one carnival a year called the AAGPS Carnival, and it was sort of like the highlight of the sporting calendar because all the schools that involved, it was compulsory for all their students to attend. So there'd end up being about 12,000 in attendance for this school athletics carnival. So the atmosphere was just crazy. And the first year I witnessed it, I didn't make the team. And then but because of the crowd and I could see the impact it had on the kids that actually competed, that made me so just determined to make the team. So that from then I just made sure I worked really hard to improve my high jump so that could eventually get into the team. And I think that was the first sort of moment when I wasn't very good at a sport, and then I saw what hard work could get you, like just dedicating yourself and then just seeing, sort of reaping the rewards of that dedication. Because the next year I made the team, and then I kept on improving to the point when I got to my final year, I was made captain of the athletics team, which I know the master in charge loved that story because it was a story of like the kid that didn't make the team the first year and then eventually ended up becoming the athletics captain of one of the biggest sports in the school, and then just sort of competing in front of all your mates, and the banter was really good with all other schools. Like they'd just be like hurling abuse at you when you're like walking around the track and stuff. So looking back as well on those, I've reflected on those sort of moments, and I think for me they were important as well because it got me used to competing in front of like a big crowd, and especially when the crowd's not always on your side, or competing in front of your friends, and when there's that pressure there to perform, because there's a lot of difference between competing when no one's really watching and you can just focus on your game, to competing when 1,000 people that you know are watching and you're only 15 years old and there's that pressure of expectation that you're going to perform. So yeah, they were really important moments, and I think you wouldn't really get that in places other than Australia, maybe America, but yeah, I'm not sure if England would have had the same sort of thing for schoolboy sport, but yeah.
Do you think the very first time you felt that pressure, do you feel that you embraced it, or do you feel it sort of got the better of you? Like, would you handle it differently?
I handle it differently now.
Yeah.
No, I feel like I loved it straight away. Like looking back, I don't think it really affected me too much. if anything, it spurred me on, because that was one of the main things that made me excited and wanted to get into the athletics team, was to perform in front of that sort of crowd. And I guess it's funny when I get asked questions like that. They're probably things I haven't really thought on and reflected on, but it sort of explains, why I feel comfortable in front of like a big crowd of people, like fighting in front of crowds of people now, is because I just embrace that from an early age. And of course there's nerves. I think there's nerves when you do any sport, when you're doing something you care about. But no, I think it was something I embraced, definitely. And yeah, something I feel like I embrace now as well, performing and performing what you've been working on for 12 months or whatever it may be, for people that care about you, that have come to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then after you finished high school with Kings, you then, as I said before, you then went on, you still trained some of the boys and in football and high jump. How was that?
Yeah, I think coaching was, I think that was important for developing leadership skills, because you've got younger kids that are looking up to you, and you've got to act as a role model for them and sort of show them the right way or what you think the right way to behave is in a certain situation. But I always think coaching is good as well, because it teaches you it makes you look over the fundamentals of sports that you might have, forgotten about when you were, when you're training so much, or you get to a certain level. So I always thought coaching was valuable for that. And Kings was really good because I sort of dedicated a lot of my time with sport to them when I was a student. They gave me a lot of coaching opportunities afterwards. So I ended up coaching the Kings School high jump team, and I did that for about 5 years. So I got to see some of the boys go from year 7 all the way through to year 12 and coach them all the way through. And some of them, like my good friend Marty Strong, he was in year 7 when I was in year 12. And I coached him all the way till year 12, to the point where he just completely out-jumped me. Like, he jumped 2 meters 05 or something like that, and won the GPS competition in his final year. So for me, that was almost more, I got more excited about that than when I was actually competing, because it was like I was able to take a step back and see that whole journey and see this kid become like a man, and then excel in what he was trying to do, which was pretty cool. And now we're close friends now as well. So yeah, it's created that strong relationship. But yeah.
I know in my experience of coaching a bit as well, it's really rewarding when you see an athlete go from, as you said, right from the start, and then you see them grow and then achieve their goals. It really is quite like rewarding in itself, but very differently to playing.
Yeah. You can see it for what it really is, more from that third person, and you can just see that growth and development and what they've been through, and watch it more as a story unfolding than the actual experience. But yeah.
So from Kings, so you went and studied, did a bit of study of law, and so how was that?
Being at school, and maybe it was a school that I was at as well, but there's only a few different career paths that are sort of laid out to you of what makes sense to do. And you in a way, you feel obliged to follow one of those things, or you're unsure of what to do, so you think, oh well, I'm gonna do this because it seems like something that's good to do. For me, it was law. I thought that was a good career path, and it is a good career path if you've got passion in it. But yeah, so I started studying law, and I worked hard at it, and I enjoyed some of the subjects, but especially doing work experience, working in legal chambers, and just working in and just discussing it with different people that were maybe working in law firms, I could just see that it wasn't the correct choice for me. It wasn't the career path that I wanted to go down, because there just wasn't passion. Like, I had no passion in what I was doing. So it was more forcing myself to do the work and forcing myself to go and do the work experience or whatever it may be. So I did end up finishing the degree, but when I got to, around 4 years in, and I just started having this feeling of needing to make a change in what I was doing. And I've tried to become, one of the things I've tried to do recently in the past few years is, when I get a negative feeling about something, not just push it away and suppress it, but actually, think about what it is I need to address, because obviously there's a reason why I've got that negative feeling. And I think the easy way to deal with it, you can go out, escapism, you can go out drinking or go and do all these other experiences that are taking away from that feeling, but the underlying issue is still there. So I looked into, why was I feeling like this? And I realized it was because what I was doing wasn't something that I was truly passionate about, and not something I could see myself doing for years on end and building a career off it. And I just started training at the time. And it was all around the sort of time of Conor McGregor and his rise, and how he'd been, working a job he didn't like as a plumber, and he was talented at something else, but he was told there was no career path in it, which was fighting. But he decided to make that move and dedicate his life to it. And then at the time he was reaping the rewards. He was the biggest name in sport, essentially. So I just had I remember studying one day, and I had a thought of, well, why not? Why can't I do it? If it's all it takes is hard work. We're told from a young age that with sport, you need to be picked up at a young age to be, touted for greatness or whatever it may be. And if you're not at that stage, by the time you get to a certain age, then you've missed your chance. Now you need to do something you don't want to do because you weren't good enough. And I thought, no, well, I'm not going to let someone tell me how I can live my life. I'm gonna make the decision for myself and dedicate myself to it and see what I can do. And it just started out like that. It wasn't I'm gonna do this. It was just a thought of, okay, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna attack it as a professional fighter would. And then I just ended up dedicating all my time to training. I was still studying at the same time, but the focus had shifted then. It was all about training. But weirdly, my results started improving because I had so much discipline and dedication in my training life and what I was doing. The study just fit in nicely to that, and then my results improved. So it became beneficial in all areas of my life, really.
And what was if we go back to the very, very start of your introduction to kickboxing.
Yeah.
So day one. Yeah. So you fight out of Evolution.
Yeah, in Rouse Hill, under Adrian Adelzada.
Yep. And you also go to Ethos.
Yeah, Ethos Performance, yeah.
And trained by Mia there.
Yeah, Mia, sorry.
And then you trained by Rodney as well at Blacktown.
Yeah, Rodney at Blacktown. Yeah, so that's boxing. Just pure boxing.
So if we were to go back to day one, when you first stepped into Evolution, or even before that, what made you choose Evolution Gym?
So I looked at a few gyms and online, and I was just sort of doing a bit of research. The first thing I wanted to try was just boxing. I can't remember why it was. I think I'd been watching Anthony Joshua earlier in the year, and I just had a thought about boxing, and and I just wanted to look like him, so I thought I'll give boxing a go. I looked up a few different gyms online, and I remember a few just looked like, your run of the mill, like you walk in there and it's just filled with people with ego, and they're going to try and show you how tough you are. And I looked up Evolution Gym, and there was a little video that Adrian, I can see it now, that Adrian had like a little intro video, and just the way he was talking, I can't remember what he was talking about, but I'm really big into like someone's energy that they put off. And for me, Adrian's energy was just, yeah, exactly. Yeah. 100%, yeah. It just felt right. It felt like a good match. So I signed up for I think it was a 10-day free trial at the time. And I remember going in there and doing my first session and just remembering how hard it felt. Like I thought I was fit. I'd always go to the gym. I was still playing basketball and I thought I was pretty fit. But the fitness was, and looking back now, the workout was nothing special. Like it was a pretty just ordinary workout, but I was exhausted and I was struggling. And I think I was getting to a stage in my life where I just wanted challenges. Like I wanted to challenge myself in what I was doing on a daily basis. So I think that's what attracted me to it. But with Adrian, the way he broke things down, it was never about trying to be tough or trying to be the tough guy. It was about trying to be smart, and it was about trying to be technical, and it was about, having a high fight IQ, which is when I played sport, that's what I've always tried to be. It's not, even though I'm bigger than most people, it was never about trying to out muscle them. Because when I was younger, although I was taller, I was a bit like awkward. Like I wasn't that strong. So I'd have to use smarts a bit more. So that's what attracted me to it straight away. And looking back now, like I say it to a few friends that we all sort of started around the same time with Adrian, and I always say it's such a blessing that we started with Adrian, because it really set the bar with coaching. Because whenever I've been overseas, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Holland, to these places that are supposedly, you know, the mecca of training, the mecca of combat sports, of kickboxing, I always come back excited to train with Adrian because I feel like he's the best coach in the world, and we're just gonna have to prove that in the years to come.
Did you envisage that day one when you went into the Evolution Gym and met Adrian? Did you envisage, and obviously we'll talk about what you've achieved a little bit later, but did you feel then and there that it was going to be as big as what it's become in your life? Or did you just go with the intention of, let's try something different, a bit of fitness, and we'll see what happens?
Yeah, I just went wanting to learn, and just I thought it'd be good to learn how to defend yourself, and two, just a cool skill to learn, and it was a new challenge. I remember I never had the intention of fighting when I went there. It was literally just to learn the skill. Yeah. But it's like with any sport. I think once you start, you know, dedicating yourself to it and getting quite good at it, you want to start challenging yourself, or I do anyway. I feel like I want to challenge myself. Like, okay, well, I'm learning all this stuff. Is it actually working? So I after a couple of months, I started doing some sparring, and I did quite well in that. Sort of used the advantages that were given to me, long legs, and just keeping people away with my long legs, not getting hit too much. So I started getting more confident and thought that I was doing pretty well. And yeah, but never, still, you know, going into the first fight that I had, I never thought that it would become what it is, until really I had made that decision to start dedicating everything to it and say, no, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly. I'm going to approach it like a professional. And that was probably about 9 months in that I made that change and that shift. Yeah. But still, I knew that the path was going to be long and hard, and I didn't. Looking back, I thought that it would take me a lot longer to get to the stage that I'm at than it did. I thought it would take. I think I sort of prepared myself for the worst case scenario of how long it would take to get to a certain level. So yeah.
Can you just tell them how tall you are? What weight class you fight?
So 202 centimeters, which is just under 6'8". So we say 6'8" because it scares the opponents a bit more as well. And then I fought around 85 to 88 kilos is what I fight at, and the main fighting weight would be 85 kilos.
Yeah. So you got a massive height advantage, especially for the weight that you fight.
Yeah.
Coming into your first fight, which obviously was amateur, so you had the helmet on, you had shin pads and stuff. Yeah. How did that feel? Just imagine thinking about like going into the ring thinking, well, I might get like really hurt.
See, it was funny. The first fight, I was just supremely confident, and I just had this mindset that I wasn't going to let anyone beat me whatsoever, because I think it was sort of, that was like ignorance is bliss, just thinking that because I've been doing well in the gym, but in the gym there wasn't really anyone of my size. So everyone that I've been sparring was people smaller than me that I had more weight and more reach on. So it wasn't really giving me a true perception or a true understanding of what it would be like. But with that being said, going in the first fight, I felt really confident, and then I dropped him with a head kick in the first 10 seconds. Like I remember it was just complete, just like a reflex. He kicked my leg, and then my leg I just remember my leg snapping out and just landing straight on his chin, and then he just dropped to the ground. And I just looked at him, and watching the video back, I looked really calm, but in my head I'm thinking, I'm just confused at what happened. Like, what?
I've killed him.
Yeah. And I sort of just walked to the corner, and then he was just rocked for the rest of the fight, really, and wasn't, and it just ruined his confidence. So he wasn't that keen to be in there anymore, I don't think. So I just sort of could cruise through it. And I mean, looking back, I should have finished him, but it went the 3 rounds. But I also didn't have the experience to know what to do, and it's also good that I got 3 rounds in my first fight. But it was after the first fight, and then after that, I just thought I was unbelievable. Like I thought I was amazing, and so we organised to go to Thailand. Me and my friend Paul Suhi, who was one of my first training partners, and so we went to Thailand, and I went there just thinking and it's all professional fighters, world-class fighters are there, and I went there thinking that I was one of them. I was at that level, and I just got humbled straight away. And we were there for probably 2 or 3 weeks, and the whole 2 or 3 weeks was just me getting humbled every day and being brought back down to earth. So then I came back from Thailand, and my confidence was really low, and I went into my second fight with this guy named Jamal, and I'd seen him fight a few weeks before I was supposed to fight, and he looked really good, and he'd knocked the guy out in the first round with really good boxing. So I remember going into the second fight really scared, really like fearful that this guy was going to be able to knock me out, because my confidence had taken a hit as well. But I think, and then looking back, reflecting back, pushing through that fear and doing the fight anyway is then what takes you to the next level, because you've pushed through the fear. And then I won, and I just outclassed him, and he couldn't really land anything on me. And that sort of showed me that, even when you're scared of something, just that's all completely in your mind. Between the first and second fight, the only difference was that my mindset was in a completely different place. So in the first fight, I was supremely confident that no one could touch me, and that's what happened. I won. In the second fight, I was really scared and nervous up until, when we started fighting. But because I trained so hard and drilled the stuff in, my muscle memory took over, and I still did really well, and I could deal with those emotions. So yeah, it was really important that I had that experience just to show me the importance of your mentality going into a fight.
What percentage out of 100 do you think the mentality is the game of fighting?
Everyone always puts out these numbers like, it's 70% mental, 30% physical. It's 100% both. Like, it's 100% mental, 100% physical. Mm-hmm. Because you can go in there with all the training in the world, and you see this happen all the time. There's people that look really strong in the gym, and they look like they're going to be world-class fighters. And then, in sparring, whatever, when there's no pressure on, they're amazing. Then when it comes to the fight, they crumble. When there's a little bit of pressure, when the stakes are a bit higher. So in that situation, they're 100% physical, and they've let their mentality go. So essentially, if your mentality is not strong, then in my mind, you're 0% mentality, because you've let that get the better of you. On the other end of things, you could be 100% mentality and 0% physical. So you could strongly believe that you're one of the best fighters in the world, but you've done absolutely no training. You've done absolutely no preparation. You're unfit. Your diet's been bad. Whatever it may be, you've been out partying, then you're delusional, because you're 100% mental and 0% physical. So to be world class, and you might get lucky in your early fights, on the local level fights, whatever it may be, but to be world class and get to an elite level, you've got to be 100% focused on building your mental strength and 100% focused on building your physical, and they've got to be together. You know what I mean?
For you, what is a normal day for you? What does it look like in terms of the regime of waking up, training, diet? Yeah. I know you're extremely disciplined with that. Like, even through your amateur career, you were pretty much doing it as a professional from the start. What is that for you? Yeah,
so I think, so when I was, when I made the decision to take it seriously, I didn't want to think, because I'm an amateur, this is what other amateurs do, so this is what I'm going to do. It was, no, what do I think I have to do to be the best version that I can be? And whether that be, mirror a world champion's routine and do it my own way, so be it. But it was just about being the best version of myself. So, yeah, like you said, I've been doing that pretty much my whole career throughout the amateurs as well, and obviously refining it and improving it as I go. But at the moment, life's pretty good. I like my daily routine. Basically, wake up, try and get 8 hours sleep a night. Most nights I do. I've got a pretty good sleep routine. But I'll wake up, I'll do like my morning routine, which is Wim Hof breathing. I don't know if you know what that is, but essentially it's a breathing technique designed by this guy called the Iceman. He's just done crazy things, like just reality-defying things by using this breathing technique. So I like starting the day with that, and then from there I finish the breathing, go straight into meditation, and then I'll have my morning flow state coffee, Shout out to one of my new sponsors, Flow State Coffee, Charles 10 for a discount.
Shout out Flow State.
And so I'll make that. I'll drive to the gym. When I'm driving to the gym, I'll put on, either a podcast or a sort of a motivational video on YouTube, just so that when I'm, the first things that I'm hearing throughout the day are things that are positive and that can build me up. And to add to that as well, what I don't do in the morning is I don't go on my phone when I first wake up. So my rule is I only look at my phone, like social media, after I've done my first training session. And I find for me what that does is it really grounds me in the day, and I get to decide what I'm, taking into my body and taking into my mind. So I find that if I go on my phone in the morning, then you become, victim to whatever's on your screen, whether it's negative news or it's someone having a bit of drama or someone putting out a negative message. So I make sure that I don't look at any stuff like that. I fill my mind with positive stuff. I go and train at Ethos in the morning. I do my session. And then only after I finish my session will I just check my phone. And I find at that point, because I've grounded myself so well, then whatever's on my phone doesn't affect me. I've already decided how my day is going to be. It's going to be positive because that's where I put my mind. I drive home, I've made my breakfast, eat my breakfast, and then normally I'll try and nap after that session. Once I nap, I'll get up, I'll do some recovery stuff. I bought some Normatec boots, which are like these massive massaging leg things, just to make sure I'm fresh for my evening session. I'll do some reading, I'll do some writing. I might go and, I might meet up with a friend or do something along those lines, watch something on YouTube or Netflix, normally fight related or something that I can feel inspired by. Like, I don't like watching things that I feel drag me down or make me feel sad or whatever, because I just don't think there's any point to doing that. And then from there, I go to my evening session at Evolution Gym, which is normally 2 to 3 hours. I'll get there a bit early, do all my warm-ups and then train for about 3 hours, come home, eat dinner, do my sleep routine, which is essentially just put my phone away, do my nightly journaling, just reflecting on the day, what I've learned, what I could have improved, put on my binaural beats, which supposedly help you sleep, which I find have been, and then read a bit in bed and go to sleep. And that's it. That's a day. And I feel if I do that every day, I'm always improving in different aspects, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, my fight game, my strength and conditioning game. So that routine, I'm pretty set on that. In saying that, I have had this week off because I was feeling a bit run down from training, and I think it's important to rest as well. So this week's been a little bit different, but that's my usual daily routine. Yeah.
So what drives you? I mean, does it ever, all athletes are told, train, sleep, repeat, do the same thing. Does it ever get, I guess, like, tiresome, or is it knowing what the end goal is for you and what the target is of where you want to be and who you want to become in the next coming years? Or
yeah, definitely. I think motivation is like, you'll be motivated. I'm motivated maybe 10% of the time. 90% of the time I'm disciplined. But I think the reason that I can stay disciplined is because I've got a clear vision of where I want to go and what I want to achieve. And for me, the big thing is writing goals that are just way out of my, almost something way above what you could possibly conceive of. Because to then achieve that goal, you've got to level up to such a degree that it drags you. Do you know what I mean? It drags you up to that point. So then my daily routine's got to be constantly improving to get me to that point. I feel like if you and I see this a lot, people will set goals that are just really realistic and really quite basic, and then it's, well, that's great, but you're gonna hit that goal, and then what happens? Then you're gonna celebrate for a few weeks, and then set another realistic goal. And your goal is purely based on what you're achieving, like where you are at this time. So then you're not having to level up to meet your goal. Whereas if your goal is miles ahead of where you are, you have to level up to be able to have a chance of hitting it. So that's what's able to keep me disciplined, because I know, well, I want to achieve this goal, and I've really got my sights set on that. So if I stay disciplined to my daily routine, then I've got a much better chance of hitting it. And I just enjoy the whole process as well. I literally wake up every single day excited for the challenges ahead. And that's not to say that I'm happy about what I've got to do on every single day, because sometimes I'm sparring people, and most of the time the people that I spar are people that give me hard rounds, and I know that I'm going to feel nervous before, and I know that it's going to hurt, but I'm excited for the challenge that presents, because I know that's going to help me level up. Same with my training at Evolution, same with my training at Ethos. Some sessions are just hard and they're not enjoyable, but they are enjoyable for me in the sense that I know by pushing through them, those are the ones that I improve from. So I think it's that cliched saying of learning to trust and love the process, because in the end, there's no point just having destination addiction and being like, oh, I'm going to be happy when I get to this point in my career. I'm going to be happy when I get to this place. You've got to enjoy the journey, because that's the present moment and that's all that we have. So if you can do that, then it remains easier to stay disciplined and to stay driven.
What do you say when you're training, when you're sparring against some amazing opponents that I know you sparred against? Do you go into that situation thinking with the mentality that you're number one, or that they're better than you and you've got that motivation to be better than them?
Yeah, see, I try. It's a good question. I probably haven't really thought about it before. I think what I do is I try and not think about them, the person that I'm sparring. It's more just thinking about me, and it's because it's another thing that I see people do, and I've done in the past, is getting comfortable with who you're sparring against or who you're training with. So if you're always sparring with people that you are better than, of course you're going to feel amazing, because you're always looking really good when you spar them because you're better than them. But are you going to improve from that? No, not necessarily. So you've also got to spar people that are where you want to go or better than you, and that make you stress out. So instead of looking at them and saying, oh, I want to beat them up and I want to be better than them, I just know that by putting myself in those situations, and I focus on the improvements I can make from being around those people and from sparring them. And it's crazy, because what ends up happening, and I think what I've done throughout most of my career, is I've always sought out those people that are better than me and that give me hard rounds. So that so I've been sparring these people all camp, and I've been getting to the point where I have really good rounds against them, or really even rounds against them. Then when it comes to my fight, I'm fighting people that are at the same experience level as me, or even higher experience level than me, who are supposed to be the ones that are putting it on me. But because I've been around these people that are just way above me and have forced me to level up, the fight feels a lot easier than the sparring does. So those are the things I try and focus on, instead of thinking about who I'm sparring and thinking about, trying to get one over them or whatever it may be. But that's not to say that, it doesn't get intense sometimes. Sometimes there's trash talk, and sometimes there's, but that's all part of it as well, like building that mental toughness. And
I remember one of your amateur fights that first fight I came to, I think you were fighting a guy named Jeremy Hutchinson.
Yeah.
It was about your third or fourth fight.
Yeah, so it would have been, it was like the first, it was the fourth one and first one on like a fight night, so no shin guards.
No shin guards, just the helmet.
Yeah.
And I think still to this day, you feel that he's the only fighter in your 11 fights, both amateur and pro, who's actually taken a round off you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So tell us about that challenge, because to be fair, you probably rocked a bit. Like, how did that feel? Started to get challenged, and then what was the mental reward of that coming out of the fight?
Well, I think, definitely. So if we go back to that fight, the first round, I won, and then the second round, he came out, he lifted his level in the second round and came out and landed a few, probably about 4 good shots on me.
Massive right hand.
Yeah, and I remember during the fight thinking, like, this was like a new experience for me, and it was the first time that I had like a big crowd of people come and watch me. So all these things are going through my mind, and I remember I got through the second round, and in between the break, I remember Adrian saying, "You've got to win this third round now. Like, it's 1-1. You've got to go out there and win." And I remember just in that moment, the break in between and going back out, just this feeling of invincibility coming back through again, because I knew that in the second round I'd taken his best shots and he couldn't put me away. And I think that had a bit of a mental impact on him as well, because when it came to the third round, I just came out with a different level as well. So essentially what happened in the second round was the reason he landed the shots on me is because I wasn't moving my feet, I wasn't moving my head. So Adrian told me to adjust that in the third. I came out and executed, and then just won the third round quite convincingly. So then when afterwards and looking back on that fight, it was, at first I didn't like that fight because it was the only round that I feel like I've lost, and the only round that I've been in some trouble in a fight, I felt. And of course I've lost rounds in sparring plenty of times, but it's different when it's a fight and it's what you've been building up for. But then after a few months, I started to look back on it, and I started to look back on it and really appreciate that fight, because that was the one fight where I had to test how tough I was. And I knew that I could take a punch. Like, I knew I got a good chin. I knew that I could come back from a bit of adversity in a fight and then improve my game in the space of a minute, which is actually really hard to do, especially when you've been hurt, you've been rocked, and then to come out into the next round and then level up from that as well. And it's been good watching his career from there, because I think it spurred him on as well, because he's really improved. We were meant to fight again in November or October, November last year, and until I broke my hands. But I know it's a fight that a lot of people in like the New South Wales scene want to see again, and it's one of those that we're both pro now, and I can see it being like, it'll be like a big series of fights, that one.
Is it something you want?
Yeah, definitely, because it's a challenge, and I think he's someone that's going to give me a good challenge. But I also know now that, one, we're both at different levels than we were, but I just know that my level, I just feel at the moment how I feel is that I just feel I'm untouchable. So it's just that challenge that I need, and to be considered one of the greats, you've got to clear out everyone that's in your division. So he's in the division, he's doing well, so it's someone that's going to have to get cleared out.
Watch out, Hachi. So after that, you fought Mackenzie Cunningham.
Yeah.
You fought him twice.
Yeah.
He was the king of Taree.
Of Tukli.
Yeah. Tukli. And tell us about the first fight.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to the second fight.
Yeah, so the first fight, so I had another fight after the one with James, and that was another one where I went into it a little bit still in that old mindset of fearing the fight a little bit, and also because I didn't know much about the opponent. I couldn't find anything on him, and he looked like he was quite big, and I'd heard some things that he was quite good, so I was a bit nervous going into that fight. And then I ended up having a good performance, and I felt like after that fight I sort of had this metamorphosis where I wasn't scared of the fights anymore. I was excited for the challenge. So I got offered Mackenzie Cunningham on Urban Fight Night about 2 years ago now, and he was someone that was he was like a 3-time Australian champion, had New South Wales belts, had Australian titles in different weight classes, so he's much more experienced than me. But I just changed mentally to the point where I just knew that I could. It doesn't, all those sort of accolades and whatever the amount of fights I had, it really doesn't mean anything, and I believe that I could beat him. So I went into it, and when you go into something as the underdog, there's no pressure on you as well. So you're expected to lose, so you just know that all there is to gain, really. And I remember, just going into the fight, and it started really intense, sort of throwing. We were all both throwing big bombs. I remember I just stepped in and landed a right uppercut, and because he was southpaw as well, I'm a southpaw, the angle was a little bit different, so the right uppercut the lead uppercut landed really nicely. I could see that rocked him just by the way he reacted. Like, he reacted really strange, and then after that his movements were a little bit more tentative, and I offloaded another couple more shots, and these were all hands. So I was just boxing with him, attacking the head. So his arms had really been raising, exposing his body. So then what happened next was I stepped in and landed this clean knee just to his right side of his ribs. And I remember that feeling of, you know, when you hit the sweet spot on something and it just feels like absolutely nothing. It was just like that with the knee. And I remember just looking at him and there was like a pause and we both looked at each other and there's a little delay and then he just dropped and he was just sort of like writhing on the floor. And I'd never experienced that before, like doing that to someone. So I don't really know what to do and how to react. But it was, that moment for me was like now I know I can just fight anyone. If they're more experienced than me, doesn't matter. Like I can find the will to win and clean them out. And I've put in the work to get me to that level. So yeah.
And then a few months later,
yeah,
you then rematched Mackenzie.
Yeah.
But this was for
the
Australian K1 kickboxing title.
Yeah, super light heavyweight title. So I think the first time I fought him, I wasn't eligible to fight for the title because I wasn't experienced enough. But then obviously after I'd beaten him in a non-title fight, they couldn't not give me, a shot at the title. So we went up to his hometown, Tukley, and I took a big crowd. I took about 100 people up there, and that was the first time I'd really sort of self-promoted myself well. Like I'd got myself in the local newspaper and done with the Carnage House boys, done a few different videos and stuff, and really built some interest around the fight. And also because people had seen how the first one went, they were keen to see the second one. So we went up to Tukley with a big crowd. We had about 100. They probably had the same because he was a local guy. So I remember just when we got into the ring, the face-off was, and of course there's a bit of, not bad blood, but there's history there now because we fought before and whatever it may be. And I can just remember that feeling like the atmosphere was just thick. But then going back to my early athletics days, being around that sort of slightly hostile and then also a big crowd for you as well, I felt like I was used to that. And yeah, there wasn't a finish in that fight, but it was just 5 rounds. I just felt like I dominated him to fight for 5 rounds. You were there, Benny, so you can attest to that.
Definitely.
But yeah, and then won the Australian title. And it was just awesome because I had so many people up there that were just, so many friends up there that were just really keen to see me perform, and the excitement that everyone was showing and just the energy that was in that room. Like it still gives me goosebumps when I talk about it now. And I think a lot of people even a lot of professionals probably don't get to experience that level of support and energy. And I was lucky enough to experience it early in my career, in my amateur career. And it's definitely those sort of memories and are things that spur me on when I'm training and give me that little bit of motivation to make those good memories and make those good experiences again.
Yeah. And when you finally got that belt around your waist or on your shoulder, like, what did that make? Like, how did that feel? Was it like yes, all the hard work's paid off, or this has just started?
Yeah, I think it felt good, of course, because I was confident I was going to win, but it's also, like I said afterwards to people, that's not the end goal. Do you know what I mean? It just felt like a step. It just felt like a step in the right direction. Yeah. And I know what the end goal is and where I want to go with it and what I want to achieve. So it's not something that, it's not like it was like, oh, I've now made it and this is, the defining moment. Because now I look back on it, it's like, oh yeah, it was great, but I'm doing bigger things. I'm going to do way bigger things. So it's just going to be another cool memory. And I was aware of that at the time because I've just got a strong vision of where I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after Mackenzie, you defended your title.
Yeah.
Against
Isaac Papali.
That's right.
From Queensland.
The little nugget. That fight didn't last too long, did it?
Nah. You were there for that one as well, weren't you?
I did. I was.
Yeah.
I remember him trying to look up to you in your eyes, and you could just. I even felt from the side that he was already intimidated.
Yeah.
Before the fight even started.
Well, I guess like coming down from Queensland, you've only really got your coaches there. Yeah. I think it was in Tukley again, so we kind of had I'd won the local crowd over as well. Then we had a pretty decent crowd ourselves. And when I came out, I'd chosen to walk out to Horses by Daryl Braithwaite. But I'd forgotten, it was a last minute choice and I'd forgotten I'd chosen them. And as I walked out, everyone was just singing it and just belting it out. And so it was like a really feel good atmosphere. And I remember just thinking at the time, like, I wonder what he's thinking now. Like, he's just waiting in the corner and just thought for an amateur fight. And then this whole crowd is just belting out this song and I was doing my little showmanship stuff in the ring, and
then he sees how big you really are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing with the weight class. Like, I think because I've got such long, skinny legs that I've got so much reach on these people, but I can keep my weight low that it just works out nicely. But then I've also got the frame in the future that I can put on weight and go up to heavyweight or go up to light heavyweight or whatever it may be.
And is that also going back? Is that also part of the game and part of the mental game against an opponent? You know, like, I always notice coming watching your fights, you love being the showman. You're so funny because you're this quiet, tall, lanky guy out of the ring. But then in the ring, you love the show. You know, you love to almost intimidate your opponent by the way you jump in the ring, you bounce off the ropes before you even stare down the opponent in the eye. Is that something you intentionally do, or just something that started and just...
I think it's we got a few showmans in the family, so it was just something that I think I've always been a bit of a performer, and with sport and doing different things. Like, I remember when I'd like celebrate goals when I was younger for football, and I just always had like a different celebration that I was doing and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just always something that's appealed to me, and especially I think the sportsmen that would stand out to me were the showmans. Like, I loved Terry Henry when he was playing for Arsenal, and he just always had that like air of arrogance. And then you got people like Conor McGregor, Muhammad Ali. Like, I've always looked at those people, but it's not necessarily to intimidate. Like, I'm not thinking about the opponent in those moments. I'm thinking about what I'm doing and my crowd that's there, and sort of building their energy up and then feeding off their energy. And it's like a process for me. Like, when I get into the ring, I jump, I bounce off the ropes. Like, I make sure it's like marking my territory. But for me, it's telling me like, oh, it's game time. Like, I only do that jump when I'm about to fight.
Yeah. So
it's like, and it's worked so far. So it's like, I'm going to keep doing it. And then when you've got Jimmy White calling out your name it's good. And then I think it has that added bonus of, when the opponent sees someone that's, confident in their environment, and they're seemingly got no fear and just excited to be there, that it does have a massive mental impact on them. And going back to the Isaac Papali fight, you saw how he just came out straight away. I'm sure they came out with a game plan, but he just came out. He just got sucked into the moment, just came out swinging.
He went for the KO.
Yeah, straight away. And at first it shocked me, but then all that it really ended up doing was it made me refocus and also get fired up. And because the crowd was getting really fired up as well, I remember hearing Ben's voice screaming some interesting things as well. But and it just fired me up. And I remember that was probably the first time I really combined aggression with focus, and just I love watching that fight back because it just
buckles.
Yeah.
Was that also rewarding for, I guess, yourself and your coaching staff as well, to see that beyond that, also that calculated and very tactile sort of fighting that you normally have, that you can brawl, that you can change your style on the run?
Yeah, I think so. I think the first time was that James Hutchison fight that we talked about. Like, that showed myself and the coaches that when there's a bit of adversity, I can push through it and I can win. And so the toughness was there. And then I guess with the Papali fight, when I finished Mackenzie and got the knockout there, that was more just like a technical, like I just created the opening and finished him. So it wasn't much of an aggressive fight. But with the Papali fight, the fact that I could stay aggressive, but also like get aggressive, but also remain composed and technical and get the finish in that way was good for everyone to see. And I think everyone was pretty pumped because in the end, you want to get finishes as well. Like that's what the crowd loved to see, because the energy after that fight, like everyone was just pumped up because it was just it was an entertaining, exciting fight. And that's, in the end, as a fighter, the more people that want to see you win. The more people that want to see you fight, the better, because that's how you're going to make more money. That's how your name gets out there, gets you more opportunities. You can be an amazing fighter, but if you're boring, people aren't going to want to tune in. People aren't going to know your name. So if you put on exciting fights, it changes the game and gives you more opportunities. So those side of, because it is a business, and it is entertainment in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, you finished your amateur career at 9-0.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like no one wanted to fight you.
Yeah.
You went for a few months without a fight.
Mm.
And then you announced your professional debut.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that we weren't sure when we were going to turn pro. We knew it was probably going to be soon. But also because I was so young in my career, and not just young in the career, I haven't really been training all too long. Like at that point, I'd only been training just under 4 years. So we just thought there's no rush, have a couple more amateur fights. But the problem was we couldn't find anyone to fight. They were sort of either they'd turned pro, or people just weren't keen to take the fight. And we were trying for a couple of months. Different promoters was sort of looking all over Australia, trying to get someone in, and we just couldn't make it work. The only person that was keen to fight was this guy, Bernard Timu, but it would have to be a professional fight for it to happen. So we just sort of, Adrian and I sat and chatted, and we just sort of took that as the universe telling us that, okay, it's time to turn pro. Like the time is now. So we accepted the fight on 3 weeks' notice, which sounds like a short amount of time, but I'd already been training and preparing. I was already in camp. I was already fit, so I was ready to go. And yeah, it just felt like the right step. Like I try not to get too overwhelmed by different titles of, this is pro or this is amateur. Like I know I've been training with world-class fighters, sparring with them. I've been training myself like a professional, like a world champion level fighter for a couple of years now anyway. So I knew that wasn't going to be an issue. Yeah.
And coming into the pro fight, your first debut, so Tima had 7 wins and 7 losses.
Yeah.
So he was actually quite experienced.
Yeah.
As a pro fighter,
Yeah.
very experienced.
Yeah.
And 6 of his 7 wins were actually by knockout.
Yeah.
Is that something that's, I guess, obviously not feared you, but you were wary of, or you were aware of? And
I guess it's those moments when you can reflect and see how much you've grown, because I know, a couple of years ago, if I was put in that same position with someone that's, seen as a knockout artist, if you want to call it that, I would have been scared. But now it was more, I could take the emotion out of it, be more calculated, and just be like, okay, well, he's got his knockouts from his right hand, just avoid the right hand, and so it's something that I was aware of, but I just knew that I've sparred people and fought people with big power before, and I've got through it. I've won. I've taken big shots and I've pushed through. So I knew I could push through. So I didn't let it fear me. But of course, going into a fight, it is scary. Like there is a bit of fear involved. Like that's part of what makes it fun. Like if it feels like it's easy and you're not worried, then there's no point to it. There's no challenge there. So I just knew I had to avoid that right hand. Watching the fight, during the fight, I wasn't happy with my performance straight after, because I felt like I wanted to start my professional career off with a knockout. But then watching the fight back, I just, he couldn't touch me, and the most important thing for me and my coach Adrian was that everything that we'd been drilling in training, I executed in the fight. And it was, so for us, I know for people that hadn't been seeing me training, it was just seeing me perform. But for Adrian and I watching the fight back, it was like, oh look, that's what we've been drilling, and you've been doing this, and we've been drilling all these things that I then executed, and they all worked. And I think he landed a couple body shots, landed a couple of leg kicks, but apart from that, I just pieced them up for the whole fight. So yeah, I think it was a good start to the pro career. A good little tough fighter. I hit him with some big shots, a lot of shots, and he was still there ready to fight. So it was a really good little test for me in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And where to from here? So obviously, since then the world's changed a lot with COVID and
Yeah.
things like that. Is there any idea of when you may be able to fight or what your next move is?
Yeah, so I mean, I was lucky with that fight that it was March the 15th or something like that, or the 13th. So I managed to just get it in before, and I think like the next day they were cancelling fight shows. So at the moment, the Combat Sports Authority, which is a government body which overlooks all the combat sports in New South Wales, isn't putting on fights. There are shows in places like Queensland, New Zealand were trying to put on fights, but obviously the border with Queensland's closed at the moment. So at the moment, I'm just staying patient. I'm improving. I'm helping my good friend Ty Tuivasa prepare for his fight, which is going to be in October. Can't announce who the opponent is yet, but it's
Thought we were gonna have a world first.
Yeah, you can drop it when it comes through. But would you see Josh Coolabaugh's fighting October 4th against Charles Joyner? There's a little announcement for you.
Look out for that one.
but yeah, so just helping him prepare and focusing on all the other little things that maybe you wouldn't have the time to do when you're in fight camp. You know, like working on getting my sleep routine good and building other little habits so that and obviously my training habits have remained consistent as well, so that when the opportunity arises, I can just jump on it.
Yeah.
But just being open to whatever may come. For me, I'm not stressing too much because I'm still young. I'm still really early in my career, and like I said before, really early in how long I've actually been training. So I'm ahead of where I should be. So now's all okay to sort of just sit back and relax and just see what happens. Yeah.
What do you think your fighting career has done for you as a person? So if you were to look back at who you were before day one when you entered Evolution to now, I mean, it could have been so easy. You could have done your law degree. You could have done what, I guess, the norm of society says, which is go get your job. You could be earning 80, 100,000 K right now a year.
Yeah.
But you're not. You're doing what you love. You're doing, I saw an Instagram post you posted the other week where someone asked you, what's your definition of happy?
Yeah. So I think, what was it? It was, something along the lines of, are you happy right now?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what I said to it now. Do you remember?
It was something about, like, basically what I just asked you. So, like, happy is what you define as yourself.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So it's your perception of it. Because, there's... Yeah, so take that example you said before. I could be doing my law... I could have, been working in... for a law firm, making good money, and be doing what society considers to be successful, in quotation marks, because I'm working what they consider to be a good job, making good money. But despite those external things, because how I feel it would be, because I'm not working on my passion and not working a life that I want to live, then I wouldn't necessarily be at my happiest for now. So whereas someone that that's working a job that people might not consider to be successful, they are more happy than a person in that successful job, and the reason for that is because of what they focus their energy on. So they focus on what they have in life and what they're doing and what they're grateful for. So for me, I think I am at a happy place in my life because I focus on all the things I have. I've got amazing people around me. I've got an amazing team around me, amazing family, friends. I'm working towards a goal that I really want to, that I'm really passionate about and really dedicated to achieving. And although there are obviously some negative things going on, which I could focus on, like not having a fight at the moment and COVID slowing things up and the future being uncertain, there's no point on focusing on those things. I might as well just focus on what I can control, what I can do, and then create my happiness from there. So yeah, that's how I perceive happiness.
Who are the people, I guess, maybe firstly from a sporting perspective, and then maybe from a personal perspective, who are the people that you really look up to and have had massive impacts on your life?
Yeah. So if we look at sporting, So I guess I love looking at people like Muhammad Ali, because he's someone, you know, that stood up for what he believed was right, and just put himself out there, shamelessly put himself out there, didn't care what people thought, just did what he thought was right and was right for him and his family, and then gave back to the world. So I love looking at people like that, because I think those sort of values are not hard to come by, but they're not as sort of celebrated maybe in this day and age, where people look more at, you know, appearances and what car you have and, you know, where you live and all these different things. People like Anthony Joshua, I think he's a really good role model. Terry Henry, when I was younger, I just loved how the Arsenal footballer, for those that don't know, I just loved how he just approached the game and his confidence, and just how elegant he was with things, and when he was confident, people were just scared of him because of how good he was. They knew that he couldn't be stopped. Conor McGregor, of course, I think his journey taught me a lot of lessons about what's important in life and what you can approach, you know, how you can approach. And then of course there's people on the local scene that I look up to, like people like Ty and, you know, Mark Hunt and people like that, people that I can physically be around and I can learn from them, and I can they're people that are currently at places or have been at places that I want to get to and achieve things that I want to achieve. And I can see, you know, people like Ty and Mark, they're just normal everyday people. They'll chat to people. They don't put themselves above anyone else. They'll chat to people as they come through. So it's just learning those little lessons from people. And then, I mean, in personal life, there's so many. I'm blessed to be surrounded by people. There's of course the family. So people like mum and dad and granddads who have taught me lessons in life about resilience and, you know, treating people the right way and how to approach life. And I think it's something I spoke about on a podcast yesterday, actually, that my early years moving around the world a lot, we had such a small family, and my parents in particular just taught me how to be so open-minded in that time, and how to just be resilient and accept situations for what they are and make the best out of them. Like, I remember when we first moved to Gibraltar, it was a bit of a culture shock, and coming from Malaysia, where it's just a completely different lifestyle, moving to Gibraltar, where, yeah, it was just very different, a bit of a culture shock. And at first we were all a bit, you know, depressed about leaving Malaysia and thought we'd made a mistake. But then just the very next day and the few days afterwards, we just we had to turn our mindset around, and we ended up, you know, making the most out of it and really enjoying our time there. And then looking back and reflecting on that showed me how to do that, how to just change what I'm focusing on, change my mindset, because I had to do that at a young age. I mean, there's so many others I can list. People like Adrian, like Mir as well, yourself and Andy that attack what's ahead of them, whether it be in sport or business, and always trying new things. But I think it goes, the truth is you can literally get inspiration, or you can learn from absolutely anyone, because you just choose what you can focus on. You know, you can focus on their good traits and what they do well. There's some people you learn from by what they do poorly, and you don't want to mimic them, and you learn from their mistakes so that you don't have to make those mistakes in the future. So yeah, I'm lucky that I've been blessed with many people around me I can learn from, and I guess also I've been blessed with the awareness that I can learn those lessons, and I can see what I can learn from those people as well. Yeah.
What would you say to someone who may be listening to this podcast and maybe, like you, going through study, or when you were going through study, or sitting at their desk, going to work, driving to work, thinking, shit, this is pretty boring. What would you say to that person who may be looking for change?
Well, what I would say to them is the power's in your hands. Because I've had this conversation with a few people, and they'll hit you with it's easy for you to say, like, I've got these responsibilities and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I don't have the luxury to chase after my dreams. Like, it must be nice. But then, once again, that's just choosing what you can focus on, because everyone's got their responsibilities, everyone's got limitations, everyone's got reasons why they can't do things. But there's always, equally on the other side of that, there's always something you can do. So what I would say to that person is, first of all, sit down and figure out what it is you truly want to do. Then figure out what you can do right now to start working towards that. And then you've already made a start. If you stay disciplined and consistent at that, it'll be a snowball effect and you'll start building up to it. But you've got to stay disciplined and resilient, because it's not going to be easy. You're not going to be motivated all the time. But if your purpose is strong enough, you'll be able to drag yourself there with discipline. So I think the most important thing is just being self-aware and figuring out what it actually is that you want to do. And then simply just start working towards it, and leave behind the stories of, oh, well, it's because of this that I'm like this. And, oh, because, my parents treated me like this when I was younger, now I act like this. Or I was bullied when I was younger, so I can't do this. Or, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many excuses that can be made, but they will literally serve no one. They'll only serve to keep you in the place that you don't want to be. So let those go, figure out what you want to do, and start working towards that. And do the things, focus on the things you can control in this moment to get you towards that place you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Thank you.
If we stop talking about you for a little while.
What?
Just for a little while. What do you think how do you see the landscape of Australian boxing and MMA, kickboxing? Right now, obviously we've got Robert Whittaker in UFC, who's right up there in middleweight. We've got Volkanovski, defending champion. Ty's coming back. Mark Hunt's going to smash Paul Gallen's face in.
Yeah.
Bloody Shire boy. Where do you think it's going towards?
Well, I think it's growing. I think there's so much more interest in it now. There's so many more people, that are training in the sport, and there's so many more people that watch it on a weekly basis, and so whenever there's interest, there's going to be growth, because more money is going to be directed at that. There's going to be more time spent on it, and I think we've seen it. We've got fighters now that are sort of world revered as. And I think Aussies are always viewed as tough. You know what I mean? So I think, especially if you look back on the old K1 days, a lot of Australians and New Zealanders used to dominate the K1 kickboxing, like Mark Hunt, Cepho, Peter Graham. Like there's so many. So I think it's going to be back on the rise. But it just takes charismatic people and people that can bring eyes to the sport. So you've got people like Whittaker, who's that classic Whittaker and Volkanovski. They're both classic humble Aussies that get the job done. Then you've got someone like Ty that's, people love him because he's Aboriginal Samoan, and he just doesn't care what people think. He's just completely himself, fights really well, and then does funny things that he does on a daily basis and treats people well. You've also got people like Arlene Blencow, who's fighting Cyborg in Bellator. You've got the boxers coming through, Jeff Horn, Tim Zhu.
Jai Bhatia.
Yeah, Jai Bhatia, who's another one that not many people know about, but they will soon, because he's an animal. Went to the Olympics when he was 17, I think, in 2012.
We've got Megan Anderson on the female side.
Yeah, Megan Anderson. You've got Chelsea Hackett's another one that's coming through. She's up in the Gold Coast. She's going to be fighting on the Contender Series in a few weeks, but she's only 22, and she's just been... is already a Muay Thai world champion, I think. Maybe 3-time world champion. So we've got plenty coming through. But I think what the beauty of Australian combat sports is that there's no discipline that we are particularly aligned to. Do you know what I mean? So maybe okay, Dagestan, they're really good wrestlers.
Yeah.
You've got if you're from Brazil, you're mainly going to be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. America, really good wrestlers normally, a few boxers in there as well, but they're pretty stuck in their ways of what their disciplines are. with Australia, it's just a hybrid of all different nationalities, cultures that come together. And that's why you just see so many unique different styles, you know. Like Whitaker, completely unique style. Someone like Volkanovski, you know, he was a footy player and he's tied that into, you know, now being he's tied that into his wrestling and his excellent striking.
So was Ty.
Yeah, Ty's exactly, footy player.
Yeah.
Street fighter, and just like tie that into what he does in the cage. You know, you've got like I felt like myself. I feel like there's my style of kickboxing. It's different because there's, you know, the gym that I trained at never told me to focus on one particular style. They looked at my strengths and then said and work on this. So yeah, I think hopefully, and how I see it going, is Australia's going to produce a new breed of fighters, and we've already got world champions, and we're going to have plenty more. And I think you combine Australia and New Zealand together, because I think, you know, the Anzacs like take on the world together, and I think you're going to see a big uprising of that. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
I think the great thing is as well is like it's happening in our own backyard.
yeah,
We're not having to go over to Europe or America to get that
exactly.
training world class experience. It's happening.
Yeah,
As you said, Robert Whitaker, St. Mary's based.
yeah,
You know, like
exactly. Yeah,
Western Sydney.
yeah, and that's it. And what it does for the younger generation is because the Australian population's smaller. You know, like if you say you go to Ethos, for example, you'll see like George Kambosos, Tyson Pedro, Arlene. You know, you see all these top level fighters, and then you have these young kids that are coming in, you know, 16, 17, 18 to Ethos, and they're seeing these top level fighters, and it just humanizes the whole experience for them and makes them realize that, oh, these are just normal people that have worked hard and they can achieve it. And that's normally where you end up seeing the growth, because, you know, when someone sets the example, when you've got a physical example of someone doing something. So for me, it's like I can see Ty and Mark Hunt doing something. It's like, oh, well, they're my mates. So if they can do it, then I can probably do it if I just follow some of the things that they're doing. And then my group of people that look up to me can see that, and like, oh, look, Charlie's doing this. So then, oh, I can do that too. And then it creates a whole big population of people that start achieving well.
So the final question
Final question.
before we go.
Yeah, hit me.
No, you're too tall. What do you want the Charles Joyner legacy to be?
The Charles Joyner legacy. Well, I'll ask you a question first. What do you think the Charles Joyner legacy is so far?
Amazing.
Just amazing.
No, I think it's like a credit to you in terms of how you transformed yourself into this disciplined young athlete with so much potential. And I think the world is your oyster.
Yeah.
And you can go anywhere you want. And I think one day you will be world champion.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And that's how I see myself now. I'd share that sentiment. And I guess so when it comes to the end of my career, there's plenty of things I want to achieve. But I guess if you're going to wrap it up, it would be, you know, I want to be considered one of the greatest fighters that Australia's produced, and then one of the greatest fighters that the world's seen. Because like I said before, when you set these massive goals, that's the level I've got to train to now. I've set that goal. I want to be one of the greats, so I've got to train at that level. So it's going to help drag me to that. But also I think the most important thing is, like, there's no point for me. I don't want to do all these things and not leave a positive impact on people. So whether that be, you know, through looking after your physical and mental health and paving a path for other people to be able to choose a life that they want to live, and not just one that they think has been prescribed to them, or they've been told they've got to live since they were born. So if I can give people the empowerment and the freedom to live a life they truly want, then I'll be happy with that legacy. In the same way that, you know, someone like Muhammad Ali, Conor McGregor, Anthony Joshua has inspired me. Hopefully I can inspire people in that same way. So yeah, so if that's my legacy by the end of it, I'll feel happy with that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I can already say you're inspiring a lot of people.
No, thank you.
Already in what you've achieved, so
Thank you, Benny.
I think you definitely like represent your family name 100%, and everyone that you represented, Evolution and Ethos and your friends are all proud of you on your journey with you.
Thanks, Benny. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you for joining us on the first ever episode of a key to an athlete's mind.
We'll work on that.
Just once again, I want to thank Helston for supporting me during this podcast, as well as the Carnage House boys, Alex and Dukes, for giving some equipment and helping with the setup, as well as Andy, who's been doing all the social media stuff for us that you'll see very soon. So thank you.
Can I give a shout out to some sponsors as well?
Of course.
Yeah. So obviously, first, I'd like to thank Evolution Gym, being there every step of the way, and then Ethos Performance as well for helping me get my conditioning and strength to the next level, and all the other things that they do for myself and all the athletes. Thank you to Proform Physio that look after me on a weekly basis, especially that physio guy Andy, for always going the extra mile and looking out for me, and not just talking about the body, but also talking about the mental side of things as well. Thank you to City Cave, Bella Vista, who have helped me with my recovery on a weekly basis, especially the floats and the saunas. So I really recommend that to anyone that wants to try it out. And you can also get a little discount if you quote my name. Thank you to MMA Fight Store, who've been hooking me up with all the gear that I need for training for the past couple of years. So they believed in me before I was, when I'd only had a few fights as an amateur. So always grateful for them. And also you can get a discount if you quote Charles 10 at store or online. And then thank you to the new guys that jumped on this week, Flow State Coffee, who just create the coffee that I say they call it the high performance coffee, and I'd agree. It's just helps you focus and gives you long lasting energy that doesn't have that crash on the end. So thank you to them, and you can also get a discount if you quote Charles 10 with them. So thanks guys.
Thanks, Charles. So everyone, just thank you for joining in. If you can like and subscribe to our YouTube and Instagram social medias, and stay tuned for episode 2, where we will be interviewing an Australian international test cricketer.
Ooh.
So stay tuned.
Sounds exciting.
Thanks, guys.